Hi, Nick Dowgul, North State Law. We safeguard your professional license so you can get back to business. Today we got another special guest. This is Connor Malatesta of Markoff and Malatesta CPA. It's a company based out of Wake Forest, North Carolina. So, Connor, nice to meet you, man. You guys do CPA services. You also do business coaching, fractional CFO services as well. Did I miss anything?
I mean, all the other random stuff that clients ask us about. I mean, the short answer to our services is pretty much everything to do with money. Payroll, business coaching, tax prep, tax planning, getting people caught up on taxes, helping them deal with the IRS, helping their businesses figure out how to make more money, business process improvement, payroll problems, all sorts of other problems. We deal with a lot of problem solving, and I know much the same way you guys do, except we don't end up in court anywhere near as much.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're not a numbers person, then they can definitely help you out. They help me out with my CPA needs, in addition to other things as well, and do a phenomenal job. So if you need anybody, and you guys are not just in North Carolina, you guys got clients all over the country, right?
Correct. We are weirdly enough kind of a national type firm in a very small package. My entire team is spread out in Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan, Florida. Our tax team's concentrated in Raleigh, North Carolina, but we've got clients that are North and South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, Florida, Georgia, Michigan, Ohio, Texas, California, Hawaii. We got one client that's actually in Korea, which I don't know if you've ever had to deal with scheduling meetings with 11-hour time differences,
Uh,
but it's irritating.
oh yeah, yeah. That is tough. I've had to do that before. So all right. So there is massive importance of having a good CPA firm, and if anybody listening to this owns their own business or is in charge of running the finances on a business, you will understand how important it is to have a good CPA firm, because as I can attest to, they can save you a lot of money. If you get a bad CPA firm, they're going to cost you, guess what? A lot of money. So it is incredibly important to hire somebody that knows what they're doing, knows the ins and outs of everything. And then to have somebody like Connor's firm that can offer services beyond, CPA and tax accounting and things like that has been instrumental as well. So let's talk a little bit about, since we were talking about numbers earlier, knowing your numbers. What does that really mean, and how important is that in your business?
Um, well, I mean, fundamentally, if you want to consider what a business is at a kind of a conceptual level, all a business really is a collection of business processes that generate numbers, that generate money. That fundamentally, every business that's out there, no matter what you're doing, real estate, professional services like us, if you're a contractor, interior designer, any sort of, literally anything, because we deal with dozens of different industries, every business boils down to its numbers. And one of the biggest mistakes we see a lot of clients make is thinking that the numbers side of the business is optional, or something that doesn't need to be considered as a core fundamental part of the business. One of our core compliance services is bookkeeping. So one of the things we do for many, many clients, as I know you're familiar with, is we take care of the bookkeeping for the businesses so that we can ensure that we have accurate financial information to make decisions off of and know what the hell is going on with the business. Because ultimately, those numbers are supposed to be what drives all the decisions that we make going forward. One thing, particularly when we work with clients that are making the transition from solo entrepreneur, maybe having a contractor working for them, to a full, what I call really a real business, when they now have employees and have proper support staff and have to have more structure to what they're doing than just I'm the one man shop doing everything, is they will still treat bookkeeping, the financial information of the business, as just well, I have to do this for taxes. And sometimes feel as if I am screaming into the void, that really is the most important fundamental aspect of the business to have in place, so that you know what the hell is going on. And it all really starts there. Everything else that we do, all the services that the clients love, they love talking to our tax team because they save them a ton of money. Everything else that comes from that, the advisory services, when we're sitting there and doing our projections, it all comes from that core fundamental of having rock solid numbers to know what's going on with your business. And that's something that we're trying to really educate people on. I had somebody that, they're not a client, so I can kind of share this, but they once upon a time told me that, I'm a creative type, and I'm just not good with the numbers of the business, and I don't really know what's going on with it. I'm terrible at paying my bills, but when I'm in there doing the work, I'm really good, but the rest of the stuff I'm just bad at. And it's one of those where what do you think the point is of business? I mean, ultimately it's money and numbers, and you can't just say, well, I'm not going to worry about that stuff. They were losing money for many years, and I wonder why that was, because of a kind of laissez-faire attitude. But was that enough way to kind of emphasize that, yes, at the fundamental core, it all boils down to numbers, despite what a lot of new business owners, what a lot of small businesses think, is it all comes down to those core fundamentals. Everything else is ancillary.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, you put your clients first, and you do right by your clients, and you're going to be profitable. But if you don't know your numbers, then you're not even going to know if you're profitable or not. And if you're not profitable and you can't run your business, you can't help people. So as important it is, and you do need to put your clients and customers first and foremost, you got to know your numbers, and like part of that with us is, what's the average case value? And then we kind of go off that, like how many people are contacting the firm, how many people are from there setting up a consultation, how many people are keeping an appointment with the consultation, how many people from there become clients and things like that, and those are the numbers that we're talking about, obviously, and you can use that for anything. I mean, service-based businesses is where that really applies, but I'm sure that there's a way for people that are products-based business do that as well, just maybe a little bit of a different way. And, I guess their stuff is a little bit, I would say probably a little bit easier if I had to guess, than kind of forecasting for services.
Depending on the nature of the services is where we see a lot of the complexity, particularly when you're talking about services that are not recurring in nature, for example, which I know is a conversation we have had a whole lot. What we've found when we deal at times with retail, or we work with a lot of contractors as well, which I know you do, and so I think some of the examples here, I'll talk about GCs because we got a lot of overlap. So hopefully, I know some of the people you work with may take some value from this. Is ultimately GCs, any contractor that's out there, they are make or break driven by their per job profitability, their project profitability, or what is the gross margin on their job. Because ultimately, how much money you make on each job drives how much you got to work to cover overhead, profit to invest either into the business, or if you can, pull that out and actually enjoy the fruits of your labor. The example I always try to, because we work with a lot of contractors, and particularly new ones, getting them to understand the importance of that, is, let's say, for example, you're a small business and cost you 10 grand a month to just run the business, not doing anything. Okay, so we got $10,000 of overhead. Now, if your projects make 1%, right? So you get a project, no matter how big it is, and you're only making a 1% profit margin on that job. Every month, you would have to pull in $1 million worth of revenue to break even, which is an obscene amount of money to cover $10,000 in overhead. Now, let's say you're making 10% per job. Well, now you've got to pull in $100,000 in revenue consistently per month just to break even. Now, let's say you're making $50,000 per job. Well, now you only need to make $20,000 in revenue per month. And so there's a direct correlation between really how much money you make per project you do and how hard you've got to work. I don't think anybody out there really wants to be slaving away to build a $12 million business that breaks even on $120,000 worth of overhead. There is no fun in that whatsoever. And that's something that we work with a lot of contractors on to get them to understand that and a lot of them kind of intuitively pick it up when they're working on it, is that's what drives your overall health of the business and what's going on, and really whether you're going to be successful or not. And then that leads into discussions on, do we need more work? Is your pricing messed up? Things like that. But fundamentally, what it all comes down to is what are the resources you're playing with? What drives your profitability? So professional services like us, we use effectively manpower hours. We only have a set amount of time for our professional staff to do work. So for us, we're always looking at what's the most efficient use of that work? What can we do to make things more efficient? What are the opportunities for automation? How do we play around that that structural limitation in what we do? That's why SaaS companies are always seen as the perfect vehicles for VC money, for example, because you can infinitely reprint a copy of software. They don't have to deal with the same restrictions we do. Contractors are playing with their people, their materials, and how much they're making per job. When you're looking at retail, you're talking about how long does it take to move product, how much money are we making on each piece of product that we're selling? Are we doing any benefits or bonuses or things, and how does that play into how much money we're making? And so it all kind of falls on a variation of a theme. One, really, the fundamental thing that I try to get everyone anytime I'm doing any talk about small business is that regardless of what you're in, over a particular time period, cash in must exceed cash out. If it doesn't, you go bankrupt. That is it. Every business. Now, the bigger the business, the longer that time frame is. As we all know, Amazon lost money for years, but the funny thing is they still had investors putting money in. But fundamentally, every business, money in must exceed money out over a time frame, or you will go bust. Your investors will say, I'm not giving you a penny more. The bank will say, you don't get any more loans. Your savings are completely wiped out. You can't pay your bills. And then the next professional you get to talk to is a bankruptcy attorney, because now you get to have very unfun conversations. And that's the one takeaway I try to make anytime I talk about any sort of business, large or small, is that's it. That's the fundamental thing, regardless of industry, that we all have to deal with. We all got to make money.
Yeah. Everybody's got to eat. And at the end of the day, if you don't take care of your clients, though, you're not going to get other clients. You're eventually going to end up seeing that bankruptcy attorney you talked about as well. The Bezos one was very interesting that you talked about, because I saw with Amazon, this was probably about 2000, 2001. He was on, I think, Jay Leno's show when he used to do the Tonight Show back in the day. And, one of the first questions was asked was like, so are you guys ever going to we turn a profit? Something along those lines. Because you said, they didn't turn a profit for years and years. And then it became, well, we still have investors that are providing, floating us money. And obviously those guys knew what was going to end up happening. Otherwise, they're not going to give them any money. People that have money for a reason. And it's usually not because they're idiots, although that happens sometimes too.
Usually, I think the name of that one is SoftBank.
Yeah. And usually those idiots don't have the money for very long after.
What's the saying? A fool and his money are easily parted.
That is, yep. So yeah, it's very, very true. But all right, I do want to because we talked about before about one of the things that you do in your business, and one of the things that I do in my business is I've always been big on, since I opened my firm in 2019, of connecting professionals with other professionals. And I know that's not really my job. We help people with licensing issues, either acquiring or defending them, obviously. So it's not really in my purview to, be a connector. That's just some of the things that we help our clients with, because we deal with professionals every day. It just makes sense. And I know you guys have been pretty instrumental in doing that as well. You can talk a little bit about what you're trying to do there.
Yeah, so the funny thing, as I tell a lot of new clients, when you enter into a relationship with a CPA, really the only people that are going to get to know you any more intimately than we are usually your doctor or your priest. You would be amazed. I know you know, because you're in the
Yeah.
same sort of space of hearing everybody's sins, for lack of a better word. But people come to us with all sorts of troubles and problems. They think that I need to go talk to the accountant about whatever. And so we get all sorts of people coming to us for questions, for problems, things that they're looking for us to solve. And from a pure client service standpoint, we always are on the lookout for resources so that if somebody comes to us with an issue, we have somebody that we can point them to say, yep, they can get this taken care of. It's for a multitude of reasons. First is just to make sure that our clients are taken care of. I want to have answers for them if they say, hey, I have this need. What can I do to, get this problem taken care of? Because I just don't know, and I trust you. And as CPAs, there is a lot of trust that is placed in us as licensed professionals. The other part of it is, from a pure self-service standpoint, is that the more resources we have available to provide to clients, and the more resources we have to bring to bear, the more competitive we are to beat out other firms. And so it's a matter of having both, keeping them taken care of, and from a genuine point of wanting to help our clients, but also from the fact that I understand the business implications of we'll be more apt to get business if we have all of these other different resources, other people that we can pull in that we have already vetted to then beat out the other firms that don't have those resources. I know that's why particularly a lot of larger accounting firms start to do acquisitions of non-accounting companies. I know there's some of the large ones start to buy out financial advisors, for example, which good luck dealing with all the additional SEC regulations, but a lot of them are already dealing with audits anyway. So, there we go. But there's that kind of, we become a one stop. I have a problem, for the love of God, can you point me in the right direction? And particularly with a national client base, we are constantly on the lookout for more resources to help people in not just the few locations where we have physical presence.
Yeah. I mean, and just from another perspective, like with networking, getting to meet people, I like it. Like, I like meeting people. I like getting out of the office because I get tired of sitting in the office. My back and getting messed up. So I get out and about and I do stuff, meet people. Every once in a while, you run across a dud. You're just like, well, man, I can't wait till this coffee's over or this lunch or whatever. But that is few and far between. I would say the overwhelming majority of the time, meeting with other professionals, to network and add them to my referral list, like you're talking about as a resource. Usually that works out really well. Meet some interesting people a lot of times, have some good conversations and things like that. So that's always a good way to kind of keep your business moving forward. And like you said, offering something else to your customers that other people might not be offering. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
It is. And I live in a kind of a more rural area. And so one of the things that we have been kind of playing around with is how do we take advantage of having a bunch of these virtual connections? How can I so in my area, live in a town of like 30,000 people. Right, I'm about an hour and a half northeast of Metro Detroit, which is a large area. But in my area in particular, there's still very much a kind of small town mentality to a lot of how they do things. And it just comes from the fact that there's not, when you deal with, for example, the accounting firms in this area, they have been in this area for 40 years. They know this area. They know the types of businesses that are in this area. They have no idea how businesses in other parts of the country actually do what they do. And one of the things that we have been exploring is how can we take resources from places such as Raleigh, for example, and have them help the people in this area and bring consultants and knowledge that is not anywhere around here to then help bring this area up, to help educate them on here's the things that are actually possible that they effectively just don't know because you don't have a lot of high-priced business consultants, for example, in these kind of more rural areas or really heavy professional marketing firms. And so trying to, part of my goal with having a semi-virtual accounting firm is the ability to have resources in disparate geographical areas that for those that we we can then say, hey, you may be in Michigan, but we know somebody in North Carolina that does this really well and can help to a level beyond the competition. Or I have an Ohio client that, so and so they need marketing help or whatever it is. And so there's and I'll be honest, it's still a work in progress. It's still kind of an experimentation for what we're able to pull off. But the few little cases have been pretty good. We've been doing it. For example, my website guy is up here in this area. Marketing company who also does a lot of our SEO stuff is down in North Carolina, and having them work together so that part of their knowledge kind of rubs off on him. And so then he can go and help out other people in the area so that we know this is how things need to be done when you're taking that knowledge from a high competitive area. And so that's been one of the big things we've been playing around with, is just how can we take learning lessons in different areas and put them into other areas to help everybody kind of grow, moving beyond just the, one local geographical area and all the information is contained there. We got clients in California that learn new stuff that I wouldn't even have thought about because they got opportunities there that we don't. So why not try and learn from them and apply it everywhere else? Even though this state of North Carolina is the hellscape of regulation, there's still a bunch of good learning lessons from how they do business there.
Yeah, that is very true. Very true. So, all right, cool. So I know we talked about this off camera beforehand, but speaking of a lot of regulations, and that would be the CPA board, I have not had, coincidentally, a lot of CPAs actually call me over the years. And I think, like we were saying, I might have had about 4 different people, and I've represented actually 2. One guy was accused of something that wasn't even related to CPA services. Obviously, able to get that one dismissed pretty easily. And then the other one was related to alleged violations of, it was a National CPA Association Code of Ethics that he supposedly violated. And come to find out that wasn't exactly true. So that one got dismissed pretty easily. So, hey, CPAs, they don't seem to get in trouble a lot, but I would imagine the ones that do are doing something fraudulent, if I had to guess, and that's going to get your license yanked pretty quickly.
I think usually what the ones I've read about, if anyone's losing their license, generally it's because they were either complicit in some sort of fraud or filing fraudulent tax returns, or they got in trouble with the IRS. It seems to be very much you're either not getting in trouble or congratulations, you lose, you full sent. I know from just a professional liability standpoint, generally we look more at assurance work, issuing audit opinions and stuff is where I think some of the worst lawsuits have happened. But I think generally those don't usually result in actual revocation of licenses from what I have seen from at least the large firms. Otherwise, KPMG definitely should have lost their firm license at this point with how much trouble they've gotten into. But yeah, it's an interesting one that we very much are. If we're not getting caught for fraud, we don't have the same risks as a doctor, for example. Although I guess that's because we're not cutting people open, and if you are, well, you shouldn't have been doing that anyway.
Right. Yeah. All right. Hey, man. Well, I think that wraps up all the questions that I had. I don't know if you got anything else for our viewers and listeners out there.
I think what's your go-to advice for anybody that is thinking of pursuing some sort of professional license, whether it's getting a CPA, going after trying to, get their law license, or somebody is thinking, I want to become a licensed trade professional. What's kind of your big piece of advice that you have seen with all of the different cases that you end up working that would save them a whole lot of trouble and not having to actually call you?
I would say on the license acquisition side is be oversharing. Like, if you got to err on the side of caution. Like if there's something happened in your past and you're not sure if you need to disclose it or not, disclose it. Because if they think for a minute that you're trying to hide something, then there's going to be an issue. And then if you get your license denied, then that burden of proof is on you. And so that would be for license acquisition, that would be the biggest thing. I would say the other one is um, documentation. And it doesn't matter what you're doing for the most part. Obviously, some professions you're not going to really be documenting, but I would say the overwhelming majority of professionals that offer services and have a license are going to need to document interactions with people. So documentation is huge. This one might seem elementary, but don't have sex with your clients. Most people don't do that, but the ones that do have a tendency to get in a lot of trouble. Usually, you don't want to interact with clients that way, or patients or customers, but that does still happen, and it happens far more frequently than people think, which is kind of
telling me
mind-boggling.
that's not one of the perks of the job?
No, I mean it can be, but it's not going to be a perk of the job very long because you're just not going to have a job. But yeah, those would be the main ones, man. Yeah. So, all right. Hey, well, that's Connor Malatesta with Markoff and Malatesta CPAs. If you got any CPA or related financial services needs, I'm gonna shoot the website with the additional information in the description. So make sure to check them out. They do a fantastic job. So highly recommend. And I'll probably put the phone number in there as well. So easy to contact them. But Connor, thank you so much for joining, man. Hope you have a good one. Thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me here. And it was a ton of fun. Looking forward to the next time we get to do this.
Awesome, man. So it's a Nick Dowgul in North State Law. We safeguard your professional license. Check out the blogs on my website, northstatelawfirm.com. You can check out a lot of other videos on the YouTube channel. You're obviously familiar with that because you're here. And that's North State Law's YouTube channel. And then check out Connor's firm, Markoff and Malatesta. Easy for me to say. Hope everybody has a fantastic day. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye-bye.